Hi, my name is Bill Trinkle, and my passion is the California bear flag. It started back in the late 1980s and first started with an interest in flags itself. We had a family party and we all dressed up like we were going to a British high tea, and I bought my first flag, which happened to be a flag of the United Kingdom, and I bought a book that told me about the flags of the world, and that led me to, at one point in time, start paying attention to California's flags, and then I ran into, accidentally, at a used bookstore, a book that had an actual photograph of the original California bear flag from 1846, and everything I had read to that point in time had said that there were no photographs of the flag and that nobody knew exactly what it looked like, and so it really excited me that I thought I had found something that was new and unusual, and that got me started down the road to studying the California flag. Well, at that point in time, I'm trying to think back, I guess I was approaching turning 40. So I'd been around for a while, and my whole life I'd done a lot of different things, but I had never found anything where I felt like I was doing something that was really unique and special. You know, something that had not been done before, that people hadn't, there hadn't been other people doing it, and all of a sudden I was finding something, something I could study that really was different and unique and special. And so I started looking into the flags of California, and at first it wasn't just the bear flag. I also looked quite a bit and did probably 2 or 3 years worth of research on the flags of California's counties. But I realized you can't study every flag of the world, and you even can't study every flag of California. And I finally decided that, hey, I'm going to focus my study on something that I might be able to actually really add value to, and that was the California flag. Because it was, even though now I think it's 167 years has passed, there's been hundreds and hundreds of articles and books written about the California bear flag. There are a lot of disputes still about what the history is and what happened and when it happened and who was involved and who wasn't involved. And so there was this world that I could really do something special in, and that was exciting to me. And the other side of it is, it's like a treasure hunt when you're searching for information about a flag, or when you're searching for any kind of historical information. You're out and you look at hundreds of things or thousands of things, and you'll find one little tidbit, and that one little tidbit will take you down this road of a whole new area to research and to study, and new images, and that's exciting. It's like I say, it's a constant treasure hunt, and you're always finding something new. And then besides that, becoming a bit of an expert in something that it was fun. It was just fun.
What was it? I know you said there still wasn't a lot about the California flag, but what was it that originally made you choose, out of searching, all through the California counties and everything, that you landed on the California flag in particular?
Well, again, that was kind of, I'll start again. That was kind of a point in time when I was realizing that I could not study every flag of the world. And that's what I was originally doing. I was paying attention to everything I saw. I was collecting anything I saw that had to do with flags. And then I realized that would just be all-consuming, and that I would never really do much other than touch a whole bunch of areas if I did that. And once I learned more about the history of the California flag and about its history, the disputes that went on, that there were things that really could be learned, and that I could bring my own expertise. And one thing I haven't said yet is I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for over 30 years now. And when you're a trial lawyer, particularly, a lot of what you do is investigate and try to understand, what are the facts, what should be, why do things not make sense, and to really, really analyze what people say, what they don't say, how they say it, looking at documentation, all of that, and so I could bring my expertise as a lawyer and as an investigator to the world of the bear flag, and maybe make more sense, and maybe make it more accurate, and maybe create a clearer history of what happened, particularly in 1846, but also after that time, because California's flag has had a history since 1846 that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, except somehow that emblem meant something to the people who have been in California from 1846 through the last half of the 19th century into the 20th century, and even now. And here we are sitting in 2013, and there are more images of the California bear flag being used on t-shirts and baseball caps and shoes and basically any other item there is. The image has some kind of a special meaning to the people of California that I don't particularly know why, but I know it does. When you learn a lot about something, you also learn how little you know, and having the opportunity to share that with people is exciting. You're able to talk to people and sometimes have very serious conversations about, what's true and about a particular point in time or a particular fact, and sometimes even almost argue about it, but in a way of trying to understand what really happened. And that in itself is interesting. It's stimulating. You're interacting with people, and for me, a huge change came in my work, which initially was writing a few articles and knowing information and reading a lot and being aware of things and collecting things, to in 2006 we started what we call the Bear Flag Museum, which is an online museum about the California bear flag, photographs of the bear flag in the many ways in which it's been drawn or created, manufactured, textual materials, things that have been said and written about the bear flag, both from people who were there when it was originally created, also to those who have studied it for the last 160 years, and trying to bring all that material together for people so that other people as well would have this resource base to go to. And then we amplified things, added to things in 2009, so now about 4 years later, by having a blog where almost daily we had new pictures, new textual materials, anything that we see that somehow relates to the California bear flag or other people's use of it or explanation of things, and we're able to, on a daily basis, kind of have information out there and create this, again, another database for people to look at. And that's, for me at this point in time, that's kind of my main goal, is to have this resource for other people to be able to do what I've done in a lot easier way, to be able to go to a few places and get the information you need to really study the bear flag, not have to go to thousands, by bringing the material all together in a few places, the blog, the museum's website, and so that's, again, it's kind of been fun, because I feel like now we really are making available to other people the stuff that I've had the fun and pleasure of learning myself. There are some, and it's other historians who have studied the California bear flag, and the first and foremost is Hubert Howe Bancroft, who wrote an enormous history of California back in the 1880s. He was helped by a lot of people, but today that is still the very first thing you look at when you're trying to study the Bear Flag Revolt and the Bear Flag. It's that good. It's not absolutely perfect, and he had prejudices, but Bancroft's History of California on the Bear Flag is the best. And then in the 20th century, there were a handful of people. There was a gentleman who was a regional historian for the National Park Service by the name of John Adam Hussey, and in the early 1950s he wrote a article for the California Historical Society Quarterly that changed the world in terms of what we know about the bear flag. He found materials, he found documents, he found one of those letters that I was talking about earlier from the naval records that helped to really define in great detail much of the history of the bear flag that was unknown for a long time. So Hussey's one of my heroes. And the third one was a retired military man by the name of Fred Rogers, not of the TV show, but he wrote a handful of books in the 50s and early 60s, all about either Men of the Bear Flag Revolt or the Bear Flag Revolt itself. And those books are just wonderful resources for information. They're accurate. I don't know that I've yet to find anything where Fred Rogers has written and put in his book without some qualification that's inaccurate. I can't even say that with Hussey, because I've seen some quotes from Hussey that I think are a little inaccurate. But Rogers, he's just so accurate. He did so much to clarify the history of the Bear Flag Revolt that to me he's one of the heroes. What if I had my hope for me personally? I would like people 25 to 50 years from now say Bancroft, Hussey, Rogers, and Bill Trinkle. That would be nice. Well, by that point in time, I had been collecting information, collecting flags, collecting details, and all sorts of stuff related to the flag for almost 15 years. But I'd only had limited resources in terms of sharing that with other people. Like I say, a few presentations, a few talks, those kinds of things. And the opportunity just happened because my wife knows how to create websites to take that material and put it someplace for other people to see. And part of it was the development of the technology too, because it's easy to add PDF files of documents to the web now. It's easy to find images and be able to share them. So the development of the internet's technology has really been helpful to being able to share the information I had already collected in a simple fashion. And it also, all that 15 years of saving materials provides me this big database of stuff that I can go and sit down, and I basically sit down every morning to create things for the blog, and I'm able to go to that resource that I have and show on the blog by adding a picture or adding something that's been written to the blog. And it's easy because I have that resource already developed, and so again, it's kind of lucky happenstance that I got to the point where then I like a lot of people these days, where you have all of a sudden have the opportunity of being able to share in a manner that doesn't require your entire life, but basically you can put things online and it's not that difficult. Well, I wouldn't do it if it wasn't fun. Start off with. I mean, to me, it's fun. It's interesting. I'm constantly learning new things and seeing new things, modifying what I believe about the bear flag by what I read and see, and so that's exciting. And then having that added ability to real quickly and easily share that with other people, and frankly, I also don't have to. I'm able to do it my way. I don't have to ask somebody else, should I do it this way? I don't have to go through some board or whatever to get it approved. I'm able to make my own judgment about what I think should be shared and share it. And I have in my own mind, I guess, rules about that I follow in terms of what I share and how I share it. But it's in my head, and it's in what I'm doing. So that ease of not having difficulty in terms of doing what I want to makes it better too. It makes it more enjoyable. Certainly, it's because it's, like I say, it's fun. It's fun to have conversations with people about it. Not that they'll necessarily agree with me, but I know what I know, and so I'm able to share that. And they may not like what I have to say, or they may disagree with what I have to say, but I'm able to say it and share it, and that is enjoyable. And it's also fun being an expert. It's fun. I'm very, very cautious about what I say about the flag and when I make conclusions about it, because to me that's been the difficulty with the history of the bear flag, is that there have been a lot of people that have said a lot of stuff when they weren't very careful about it. So I'm very careful with what I say, and I'll qualify stuff if I'm not absolutely positive. And so that in itself, is there's a I feel partially like I'm the protector of the history of the bear flag, that by being careful and cautious and being concerned about being accurate, that I'm helping eliminate some of the problems that have been in the history of the flag by people not being as cautious. And so I think that probably is what I hope that I am ultimately bringing to the bear flag's history, is accuracy, and that the mistakes and the arguments and the disputes that have happened in the past will gradually flow to the side, and the flag will be accurately known for what it is. And that's enough. There's hardly, except for the state of Texas, which also widely uses its flag and respects its flag, I don't think there's any other state flag that is used as much, that is seen as the emblem of the state as much as the California flag. And that makes it important. Somehow it means something to people. And I don't need to understand exactly what it means to people. All I need to know is that by being accurate, by collecting the material that's out there, that I'm helping preserve that history. And maybe someday somebody else will be able to understand completely why this emblem has had such meaning. Yeah, yeah, it is, because flags get treated nonchalantly in a lot of ways by people, and some rightfully so, and some not. What's the big deal about it? But I was just gonna say, the show The Big Bang Theory. I mean, it's had I think it's 3 episodes now of their Fun with Flags with Sheldon Cooper, which it pokes fun somewhat at flags and people who are interested in flags or who like flag. But the fact of the matter is that flags have been around for a long time, and they have served purposes for communicating and for embolizing people for hundreds of years, and thousands and thousands of soldiers have died out of respect for their flag and the emblem that it's emblemized its people that they were fighting for, and so it's not the flag itself that's the important part. It's the fact that it represents some group of people. And here, with my study of the California flag, it's standing for the California people, and Californians have always been different. They've always been, and it doesn't go back to just the Bear flag, but even before that, the people who came to this country, this land on the west coast of North America, whether it was the Spaniards or the Mexicans, or eventually the pioneers who came over before the U.S. got involved in California, they've all loved this place and found it a wonderful place to live, and somehow the California Bear flag has come to stand for that specialness for the people of California. Well, this is the one of the things I find most fascinating about the very, very early history of the Bear flag and the Bear flag revolt. Start from the very, very simple part of it. The Bear flag revolt, it was in 1846, and it was a group of initially about 34 men who took the small, quiet, peaceful Mexican town of Sonoma in Northern California, and they were afraid of the Mexican authorities that they and their family were going to be sent out of California and essentially be sent into the wilderness of the Sierras and probably die during the winter months because of not having food and shelter and all that. Whether their fear was too much or not, that's for somebody else to argue about. But they were afraid, and so they took this town and decided that they were going to declare independence for Mexico. And at that point in time, they decided that they needed a flag to stand for their republic. Shortly thereafter, within 30 days, Mexico and the U.S. declared war with one another, and that knowledge came to California, and so the U.S. authorities that were in California, primarily on ships, took control of California. So the Bear flag revolt and the Bear flag were only around for about 30 days. July 9th of 1846 is when the U.S. flag was raised at Sonoma and the Bear flag was taken down. As soon as a couple months later, in September, the people who were involved in the Bear flag revolt were already thinking about how important that event was. That they felt like they had laid the foundation for what came with the U.S. authorities taking over, that they had stood up for themselves and their families, and even though ultimately from a military point of view the Bear flag revolt was probably fairly insignificant, they were proud of what they had done, and that created the background foundation for a care and concern for the flag, and ultimately, then the entire world came in with the gold rush, and the flag started to stand for that pioneer kind of spirit. July 9th of 1846 is when the U.S. flag was raised at Sonoma and the Bear flag was taken down. As soon as a couple months later, in September, the people who were involved in the Bear flag revolt were already thinking about how important that event was. That they felt like they had laid the foundation for what came with the U.S. authorities taking over, that they had stood up for themselves and their families, and even though ultimately from a military point of view the Bear flag revolt was probably fairly insignificant, they were proud of what they had done, and that created the background foundation for a care and concern for the flag. And ultimately, then the entire world came in with the gold rush, and the flag started to stand for that pioneer kind of spirit of coming to look for a better way of life, frankly looking for wealth as well, but and it became emblematic of those special people that came to California, and it's been that way today. And like I say, it's really been amazing the last 10 years or so, because the flag's found just an entirely new world of appreciation, primarily among young people. And there are a lot of reasons probably why, but that too, it's kind of re-enlivened the symbolism of the flag for the people of California. A new generation now sees the flag. They know what it is. They know what it means. They're proud of it. They may shorten it and call it a Cali flag or a Cali Bear rather than California Bear flag, but they're excited by it. They wear clothing all the time that shows that they know what the flag is and what it stands for.
Do you think there has been a loss of like the significance of what the flag represents, or do you think that has changed over time for the people that it is representing?
I definitely think it's changed. The flag's history started off with those people who were the pioneers, and them respecting the flag and them promoting the flag. And I think it got to the point for some periods of time where it was kind of like you had to be one of the founding fathers of California for the flag to have much meaning. You had to be you had to somehow be related to the people who founded California as a state, or else you didn't have a right to share in the meaning. But again, sometime in the last 15 years, the Bear flag's been picked up by skateboarders. It's been picked up by the hip hop community, the rap community. It's been picked up by the common youth brands, Hollister, NorCal, and others. There's plenty of others that have used the image to stand for a new generation, and it's not just the white pioneer background families that it represents now. It represents the youth, and maybe even more so the African American youth, the skateboarding youth, the Hispanic youth, and so it's a huge deal, because it's broadening the meaning of the flag to the people of California. And our culture is so diverse now, that the white culture is going to be less than half of the population here, and if not, it isn't already. and if the flag is going to survive, it's got to stand meaning for the cultures that are here now, the ethnicities that are here now, and it appears that that's happening. And I don't, it's not like somebody's directing it. It's like somehow the young people of California have found a way to adopt the bear flag as something meaningful for them. About the revival part of it, I think the thing that's significant to the youth of California about the bear flag is the same thing that was significant to those 34 men who were creating the flag back in 1846, and that is there's something rebellious about putting a bear on a flag, particularly a grizzly bear, and so you see a lot of designs using not just the bear like the one behind me that's just sitting there, but you'll see standing bears and growling bears and bears waving their arms and claws out, all in designs for t-shirts and baseball caps and all kinds of apparel. So I think it's that rebellious spirit that the image lends itself to, that has made it speak to California's youth. I'm not positive about this, but I think it probably was the skateboarding communities in California that were the first to utilize the bear flag in the last 15-20 years as emblems. Maybe a little bit before that, the surfing community, but I'm not sure about that. And particularly with both communities, both the surfing community and the skateboarding community had a rebellious part to them that the bear flag lent itself to. And so because they were rebellious, they had an emblem that was rebellious, and then that kind of expanded to mean something more for youth. And that's what youth does. That's what young people do. They have to find their own way, and they have to stomp their feet on the ground and roar. And the bear flag is a good image for that. And so I think that's probably why, at least at some level, that it's been adopted and adapted. As to flags diminishing and their significance, I don't really think so. I always tell a story. It's an unquestionable fact in the United States of America that Supreme Court law that you can destroy a flag, you can burn a flag, and it's absolutely legal free speech under our law. However, probably in my mind at least, the quickest way to get yourself arrested is to go down to any public building, take out a US flag, and burn it. Flags still have meaning, they still have power, they still evoke emotion, and so I don't think they've really gone away. I think actually now, because everybody can have a flag, flags are cheap now. You can go buy a California bear flag, go on eBay, search a little bit, and you can buy a 5 foot California bear flag and pay less than $5. 40 years ago, it probably would have cost you $50. So things are much more available to people, and I think that's part of the reason that they're still used. They still have their purposes on ships and for military, and even more so, they still have power as political messages. You know, what do people who dislike the United States do when they want to rile the United States? They burn the flag. And so I don't think that the meaning of flags has minimized or diminished over the last number of years. I think it's stayed basically the same. It's still a very powerful image, because we still, as people, we still think of ourselves as being from a particular country. We're Americans, we're Canadians, we're French, we're Iranians. We identify with our nations. Just because we need to identify with some group, and I think that's the reason flags still have meaning. Yeah, of course. It's kind of just more, it's part of my life, and you know, I go up and down in terms of how much I do it, how much time I spend, depending on what the other push and pulls on me are, but it's always there in the background. And for example, if I've worked really hard and I'm in a weekend and I want to relax and I want to do something that's just fun for me, I'll go look at 5 antique stores to see if I can find a California flag. I mean, it has that ability to pull me in too. So it's I really can't imagine my life without having the California bear flag somehow involved with it at this point in my time. But I've been doing it too on some level for over 20 years. So it's just part of my world. First of all, it goes back to being, it's interesting to me, it's fun to me, it's simple to me. There are, at any point in time, there's 1,000 different things I could do depending on what mood I'm in, depending on how much energy I have. Sometimes all I have energy to do is go look on eBay and see if there's anything interesting for sale. And it doesn't take a whole lot of effort to do that. But it still keeps me aware of what's going on. It keeps me aware of what new products are out there. It keeps me aware. And so even though it's not draining, maybe I'm not sitting down doing a detailed critical analysis of some research, because I don't have the energy. I'm able to do something. And so I guess I have built my relationship to studying the bear flag so that it fits all the little nicks and crannies of my life, that if I've got 5 minutes, I've got 5 minutes. Again, the most recent big deal for me has been the latest edition of the smartphones, where I can, take a photograph of something that has the flag on it, or an article, and I can, from my phone, while I'm sitting waiting in traffic, oops, I shouldn't do that, or when I'm sitting at the doctor's office, or when I'm waiting in a line, I can post something on the blog, and it's quick and easy and do it. So I've built it so my interest fits my life, and it's comfortable. It's what I would have difficulty in now is in even if you asked me to pick the 50 most important moments, I would have a hard time, because there's so many. I mean, from that very first time I was sitting in a used bookstore in San Francisco and opened a book and saw those photographs, that was a game changer for me. We, over the last 5 or 6 years, have almost every year gone to Sonoma for the annual Bear Flag anniversary ceremonies that are held in the plaza there, and going to those and meeting all the people who are, they're there for the Bear Flag and the barbecue that goes on with it, and so they're more interested in meeting all those people and having them look at the stuff and appreciate the stuff we put on exhibit. It's just fun and exciting, and I'll meet people and like last year, a guy walked up to me who I did not recognize from Adam and handed me a Sonoma Public Works embroidered patch that had the Bear Flag on it. I didn't have it in the collection, but we had talked about it the year before, and he remembered, and he said he would get me one, and he did, and so that's exciting. I've given a number of speeches and talks both to kids in elementary school and also to some groups, and to be able to give them those pieces of information that are not readily available, and talk to people afterwards. It's fun and enjoyable, exciting. I've also there's a national organization called NAVA, North American Vexillological Association, people who seriously study flags, and those people, I've been a member of that group now since 1994. So when I go to their meetings and talk to people about flags, that's fun, and what I'm doing and what I'm seeing and what I'm researching, I'm able to share with people who are also interested in flags, and that's exciting. The Native Sons of the Golden West who sponsor the annual Bear Flag raising, I've begun to know particularly some of the main people in that organization, and recently I've been asked to help plan a centennial event for the Bear Flag Monument, which is in Sonoma Plaza, and that's fun. I'll probably write an article giving the details of the history of that monument and its creation, and help plan the ceremonies that are going to be held next year. And so that's exciting. Finding new flags is always exciting. It does. I mean, I have regular things I do all the time. Every morning I get up and I create posts for the blog, and I've been increasing that amount of posts over the last couple months, and so it takes time to find the post and give a headline and title for it, sometimes to give more information. Sometimes it takes, for one post, it'll take me a half an hour of time to have the stuff that goes with either the image or the document to put that up. So and first thing I do in the morning is that, and probably the minimum I spend on that in the morning is a half an hour while I'm having my regular coffee and all. And then I'm on a routine basis every day. I look at eBay to see if there's any flags for sale. Every other day or so I check Amazon to see if there's something new that they're selling that's related to the California flag. I'll go to Google Images and I'll search different ways to try to see what new images are out there, whether it's t-shirts or clothing or baseball caps, or sometimes I luck out and there'll be somebody selling some kind of a new flag or something like that. So that I do that. And I intersperse it when I'm doing other things, when I'm working on the computer, or I'm checking my email, or going on Facebook, or that kind of things. I'll always be looking for things related to the California flag, and just interspersing. And then there's the big things I do, the things that take more time and over a longer period of time. Right now I'm trying to write a book on one part of the Bear Flag story, and that's a real difficult process, but a real interesting process, and so there's a lot more time that I'm spending doing that. I'm always looking for new places to maybe look to see if somebody has old flags, going to antique stores, thrift shops sometime, checking online, those kind of things, because it's getting more competitive to try to find California flags, particularly ones that are older now, because they've become so popular. So it's everywhere, and it's part of my joy. It's fun. It's not work. It's just fun. Well, yeah. Just one that popped right in my head was a little over a year ago. My mom died, and she was elderly. I mean, it was sad that she had died, but it wasn't a shock, and it wasn't. She's lived a long, healthy life, so it wasn't a negative thing in a way. But when we got to planning the services and all, I realized I kind of wanted something to be with her. And I thought of it even before I left from my home here in Sacramento to go down to Southern California, where my mom was. And I finally decided that it just felt right to have a little California flag buried with her, just because it was like a little piece of me that she took with her. And I asked my sisters if they had any problem with it, and they didn't, of course. And so my mom was buried with a little California flag, so she's got a little piece of me with her. She's not alone, kind of. I don't think it's so much that kind of a release for me as I always like to have something I'm doing that's interesting, and with studying the bear flag and searching things, there's always something. One of the big things is fun, and it's particularly been true over the last 10 years. There's been so many changes in the technology that's available, the internet and scanning abilities and access to library materials and documents and that stumbling on new ways to do things, new ways to find things, that in itself is fun. And I started that, and it was way back because before I was really into studying the bear flag, for a few years I studied my family's history, genealogy, for a couple of years. And there I learned some of the investigative techniques that I grew to use with the bear flag research. And then as the technology happened, then again it was like every day I'm learning something new, and a new way to use some facet of the technology in a way that's beneficial to what I'm trying to do, where I'm able to get that information available to other people. I may have mentioned this earlier, I can't remember, but I bought an iPhone a couple years ago, and that's been an amazing change, because now you have a camera right there, and so all those opportunities that come up in terms of taking photographs of the bear flag, photographs of the bear flag on things, it's just there. And then you download a little app, and you're able to upload it to the blog, or upload it to Facebook, or Pinterest, or Twitter, or all those options and stuff. And so that's exciting. It's a new way of being able to share, and an easier way to be able to share. And so all of that's been exciting. And I've enjoyed that. It's also, being a lawyer, as my profession, part of what we do is investigate. A lot of what trial lawyers do is investigate. You're trying to find out what the facts are and how you're going to prove them. And those techniques and strategies have been helpful in doing the research I've done on the California flag, and vice versa. I've learned things by studying the California flag that that are helpful in my research for clients and cases. So there's been that kind of a change and a growth for me. There's something about knowing a lot about a subject that is in itself helpful. I've been probably more on the emotional side. I'm proud that there may be a couple other people out there that know close to what I know and about the California bear flag, but not many, and probably no one that knows as much. And that's exciting, and that's fun, and to be an expert about something, and being able to share that expertise with people, and so that's fun. You mentioned NAVA, which is the North American Vexillological Association. It's a flag group that I've been a member of since 1994, even before I started really being serious about the bear flag. And so there's tons of people in that organization that I've met and talked about flags with, talked about the bear flag with, worked with. I've been an officer of the organization several times, planned one of their annual meetings, and have been able to share like I said, the bear flag stuff with those people who understand the study of flags better probably than any other group. Besides that, I've spoken a handful of times to schools. I've spoken to a couple of adult meetings. We go to the annual bear flag ceremony in Sonoma, which is sponsored by the Native Sons of the Golden West. And I've met all those people to the point where now it's kind of, I don't even have to really say anything. We have a spot to put our tent and to put our exhibition up at the annual bear flag raising without even asking. It's a foregone conclusion because it fits in so well to what the Native Sons are doing. And then just recently, I was asked to help coordinate the 100th anniversary of the Bear Flag Monument, which is a huge monument in the Sonoma Plaza right across the street from where the Bear Flag was originally made, and within a few feet of where it was originally flown. And so we're working on just the beginnings at this point in time, but the plans for celebrating the 100th anniversary of that monument in Sonoma Plaza next year. And so that's exciting, and getting a chance to do that and being asked to do that kind of thing is exciting. Going back a little bit to the book I'm writing, I've written lots of small things over the years on the bear flag, but I've never actually written a full-length book on it, and it's always been part of my plan. And over the last few months, I've been taking the opportunity to write a book, which will probably end up being a children's book, because there was a teenage boy that was directly involved in the bear flag events and tragically ended up dying. He was actually the second owner of the original bear flag. And that process of, if it wasn't for the bear flag and studying the bear flag, if it wasn't for learning all that information, I don't think I would have gotten to the point where I would be writing a book. Even though I have the capability and the knowledge and all, it took that extra little bit to push me to do it, because doing something like writing a book is a major amount of work, and there's so much else that's going on in life. It's sometimes easier to avoid the things that are really, really difficult. But the other side of it is it's really interesting to learn about myself and how to write and what I need to do to get myself keep moving on the writing, and so that is something I owe the bear flag. If I wasn't passionate about the bear flag, I wouldn't be writing a book about anything, and that's exciting. No, when I first got started, I was interested in flags. I saw this one piece of information, and that one piece of information just intrigued me enough that I started looking some more, and I had no idea where I was going to end up with it. It probably took me 2 years before I even got to the point where the bear flag was my sole focus. And I decided that, focus on that one thing, because it's so big itself that you could spend your life studying just that. And so it's just been a gradual development. The fact of having a museum literally was coming home from a NAVA convention and getting asked, hey, what would you do if you could do anything about the bear flag? And my response was, I would like to share all this information I've been collecting. And in that time, it was already 15, 16 years that I've been collecting information and material. And I would like to share it. I would like to do something. I would like to preserve what I've collected. And then all of a sudden, that turned into, let's do a website. Since then, it's turned into a Facebook page. Since then, it's turned into a blog. Probably will end up with a formalized nonprofit, trying to create something that lasts, beyond me, beyond my interest or role, just because it's significant not just to me but to all Californians on some level. So it's just grown, and it's gone the way it's gone, and I hope that that's the way it's going to go. And I'm always looking for new opportunities that fit in with the amount of time, money, and effort I'm able to bring to it to promote the bear flag and to pay attention to it and study it and publish about it. That's my ultimate goal, is that a resource be created that's permanent, so that people can both appreciate the bear flag, see objects, see things that were created related to the bear flag or with the bear flag on it, and then also create that database of material and information and facts and documents, so that the next generation of people who study the bear flag don't have to go where I've gone, or at least they'll have easy access to the material that I found and used. And again, that's the whole thing of trying to be accurate and trying to know what the truth is. It's all about the facts and the truth for the bear flag. And it's every day I learn things that you presume stuff or you assume stuff, and then you find out, oh my gosh, that's not right. And so there are always going to be new things to learn. I just found within the last several weeks that what I thought was the source of two very important letters for both of them was the Yale University Library, the Beinecke Library at Yale. And only to find out that I was wrong. One of them is from that library. The other very important letter is not. It's in the Naval Records in the National Archives. And something I believed for probably 10 years at least, maybe 12. And it was just wrong. No. Some flags are very, very, very new, and as I said earlier, like with the state flags, there's only a handful of flags that have as much interest and attention paid as there's been paid to the California bear flag. And so it depends. The United States flag has been a subject of an enormous amount of research, probably always will be. The British flag and the British flags, there's been a lot of attention paid to them. But some flags kind of go down the road, and there's, basic histories written about them and all. But at least I'm not familiar with really super in-depth studies of their history and their role. And I think a lot of flags, are flown at, particularly national flags, are flown at national events. They're flown over national buildings, but they're not part of the daily life of the people of that country. Some countries you can't. Some countries don't permit the national flag to be used by anyone except the government. So that changes too in terms of the role and the significance and the interest that there is in the flag.